whenever you see Bobby in particular feeding people, even if they're beginners, he can just make them that much faster, make them respond that much better than anyone else.
Hello everybody again. Welcome back. We've got another exciting episode here going on today. A treat going off beyond the shores of the US and checking our way into Australia. And Garth, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, John. How are you, mate?
welcome, and thank you for being on the show here for the interview.
Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Where are you from and where do you live?
Yeah, I'm based in Melbourne, Australia. That's where I live. That's where I work. So I grew up here, and I've got a medical practice here. I used to have a couple of practices, but I've got one main one in the city now.
How long has Balintawak Australia been there?
Well, Bobby first came to Australia, it was about 1990 when I first met him. We did some seminars here. But in terms of people training regularly under Bobby, that wouldn't have started probably back until about 1997 when I brought him out here to train a small group of us who'd been training. But the first a group of us that started training were based on his videotapes. So we started back probably in about 96. Training from his tapes that he did with Irwin back in the ones he did recorded in Charlotte in 94. So we learned off the tapes and then brought him out in 97. Then he invited us to, myself and Paul Gale, one of my good mates here, and we went over to Charlotte in 98 and hence started training more seriously in Balintawak with him.
When and how did you start your Balintawak journey?
Well, as I say, I'd been to the Philippines quite a few times, training in modern Arnis, and first started training in the Filipino arts when I was on the way back from a training trip to Japan, because I'd done a lot of karate when I was younger, and we're coming back from Japan and stopped over in Manila, and Roland Dantes, I don't know if you know of him, he's pretty famous, yes. FMA, modern Arnis guy, bodybuilder, movie star.
Yeah.
Well, he actually lived in Melbourne, have a similar
body type.
He won Mr. Philippines, I think, about 5 or 6 times. He was third in the, I think, Mr. Universe to Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was one of his friends, and fantastic guy.
Yes, I met him a couple times.
Yeah, he wouldn't meet a nicer guy, and he actually lived. He had an Australian wife, and he lived in Melbourne, Australia. So he split his time between Melbourne and the Philippines. So we were training in modern Arnis before I saw Bobby, and Bobby, it was about 1990, he came to the karate school I was teaching. He demonstrated with Peter Ball, who is his sponsor to New Zealand, and that's pretty impressive, you know, and he was interesting. He didn't speak a lot of English still then, Bobby, but he was, he certainly still had that aura about him, you know, just sort of don't mess with me, but call me Bobby, but, you know. He came back the year later and there's they had a festival here, and that's where he met Irwin, the South Pacific Connection. Irwin came out as a representative of Remy Presser, so he couldn't make it, and he met Bobby then, and that set up a connection to when Bobby was going to go back to America to try and establish himself, the connection with Irwin in Charlotte.
So he met Irwin there in Australia, not here in the US.
1991, he met Irwin at this festival. My karate instructor here, he was having a 50th birthday, so he thought he'd invite all these AO people in that South Pacific region. So he invited Remy Presses, Wally J came down, Ted Tabura came, who was another great martial artist. And as I say, there were quite a few other people there. It was quite a big festival. That was set up a connection for them when he went back to America to Phoenix, Arizona, where he's first based, Bobby. Then went to Cincinnati. He had a falling out with his sponsor, Peter Ball. So then he was left on his own in Cincinnati with George Penderfield and George's brother, Alan, who Bobby had met in New Zealand. So it's sort of, the meeting of these sort of connections formed. And then in Cincinnati, when his visa was about to run out, that's when it was organised for him to go over and do another demonstration in Charlotte, and that's when they invited him to come back and stay there and train the law enforcement there. So he passed through in '95 when he was taking some guys to the Philippines to Rick Mitchell and John Whitten, who's from New Zealand. He was taking them to do completion testing in the Philippines, and that's how he came through then. Bobby came out in '97. We trained with him intensively for a week, and we then started teaching, and as I say, set up this arrangement. We started traveling to Charlotte and started taking some Australian guys over. Bobby started coming out every other year. I was able to catch up with him in Charlotte a bit more often than the others because I work as a doctor and I've got a medical practice, and I do a lot of work with medical lasers, and the main conferences are in America. So I try and tie in a big business trip with a Bobby trip, you know. So link through Charlotte and then onto a medical conference. So it makes a sort of a bit of a balance to it all.
That's the way to do it. But no, you know, it's an interesting insight to get the connectivity between Australia, Cincinnati, and actually even in North Carolina. You know, I mean, I didn't realize that they were all connected into Australia in that retrospect of as a meeting place. That's very interesting. Why did you choose Balintawak?
Well, as I came from I'd already done probably 20 years of karate before that, so I was drawn to the sort of the weapon-based art. So that's what attracted me to the modern Arnis. And then obviously Bobby was probably the main driver. The thing I most liked about it was the application, the training, being applying techniques in fast random play, which was different to what I'd seen before. It was very much you know, drill technique based and then free form. There was none of this sort of application. And coming from the karate background, where free sparring was a really big part of what you do, I really liked the play side of it, and just the speed and the power that he could generate, because the movements really of the Balintawak I never really found too hard, but to do them well is really, really hard. You know, the base movements you can learn pretty quickly, but to be good at it is really hard. And yeah, I think I saw one of the Canadian guys. I saw his website the other week, and he was saying, I think he says, easy to learn, a lifetime to perfect. You know, that was his message, his marketing thing that he was saying to the Canadians. And yeah, as I say, the gross movements are pretty simple. I mean, really, I think I don't know if you've read Ray Galang's book, Warrior Arts of the Philippines, but he talks about the Balintawak, whereas really there's no secret techniques. You know, most of the Filipino arts, there's only so many ways you hit with a stick. But yes, what separates the Balintawak is their method of training, you know, and that's whether it's from the one-on-one or to the grouping systems or whatever, it's the method of training that sets it apart. Yeah, there is no secret techniques, you know, as I say. But, well, if there is, the one secret technique is sweat, you know. I mean, the harder you train, the better you get. But, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, putting in the sweat means putting in the reps and putting in the work. Yeah, no shortcuts to putting in the work. For everybody that doesn't know, there's some really good articles on some of the FQIs out of RV Balintawak, Richmond, Virginia Balintawak. It's called 12 Basics. Now, in this, I guess this write-up, they did a little bit of write-up on you. Actually, you had a write-up on there. And you had 3 different components that you mentioned, reflecting on when you first met GM Bobby. And there were 3 things that stood out to you that were quite memorable. I summed it up to, as you mentioned, the not difficulty to do the movements. The second one was kind of more about the grouping systems. And the third one was more about his persona, being respectful, but hey, don't mess with me kind of, you know, aura. Are there any particular to those 3, like that specific moments, or maybe to dive deeper into what it was that you saw within those particular 3?
Well, yeah, certainly I mean, his persona is very interesting, you know, because there's that element of real charisma, but there's also that sort of hard little edge to him as well. And it's really for him to be able to just command total respect when you're training, but then to be able to suddenly become such a good friend. That's a very, very hard thing for people to do, you know, and he just does it seamlessly. Like, we can joke around, have a good time, but as soon as you're on the mat, as soon as he's saying it, you do what he says. I mean, there's just respect that's, it's not a matter of a formal respect. It's basically just an earned respect. It's a respect based on his abilities and what he's giving to you. I've trained with lots of plenty of gifted martial artists, but, you know, very few of those get that balance right between really being that friend, that sort of mentor, that sort of positive influence on your life, as much as being an instructor too. And he does that better than anyone I've ever met. If it's more difficult to train with someone, you basically tend to appreciate it more. So whenever myself or any of the Australians came there, we trained really hard. You know, you weren't going to waste your time if you're traveling, thousands and thousands of miles across the world. So the intensity aspect and the effort aspect were important to us. And also, you know, we would ask lots of questions. I would write lots of notes. We'd want to take stuff away so that we can retain it. Because obviously not having access to someone like Bobby on a regular basis, your technical level isn't as good as people who've got him on your doorstep. So you've got to make up for that lack of technique if you want to put it with effort. So in Australia, we probably pride ourselves more on, effort over, maybe the technical side. And slowly over the years, the technical side's come through, but we still try and have that ethos of intensity and effort, and to me, that's what's important when we train with people and look at people who we might want to train with. It's that sort of ability to give the effort. It's not the athletic ability that we're after, really. It's that sort of just that commitment and effort to training, Positive people you want to be around who challenge themselves, and, that's what we want to see.
Yeah, and you mentioned write as many notes. And I think back, I'm saying, you know what? This was the time before cell phone cameras were as convenient as they are today.
Absolutely. Look, even with videos now, I still write down notes, because the thing is that the writing of the notes crystallizes your thoughts and it makes you go through it, rather than relying, I'll look at that later. And I've got hours and hours and hours of videos, but to dissect those down, that takes time too. But no, I used to come back on my trips, and one of my reception staffs, I'd just have these notes and I'd just give them to her, and they'd be typing up all these notes for me. So, I'd already written up a manual for modern Arnis for Lauderdale when I was training with him. That's when I first started starting to do the notes. The stuff with Bobby's, it's quite interesting when I go back and look at notes I might have written back, over 20 years ago now. There's often be still some things that will come out. I'm thinking, I remember we did that drill, or we did this, or we emphasised that. Because Bobby often forgets, he's got so much in there, it just comes out. He doesn't even structure it sometimes. I mean, I remember Sharon Lapare, she was saying something about how you never know what's going to happen. Suddenly there'll be something, you've trained with him for 20 years, and there'll suddenly be something that he used to do, and then he does it again. There's just such a wealth of knowledge there that just comes out. So I think taking that opportunity to write down things, and he's been very open with me too. I mean, he will just say, ask me anything. What do you want? And I'll give you everything, he says. But of course he never does, because there's always something more. And if I show him something that I might say that like there might be a counter to a disarm, and I said, remember that we did this counter to disarm. And so then he will say, okay. And then he'll do the counter to the counter. So it's always another progression, another step. There's always something else that will come out. The videos that we've taken lots of videos here over the years, which have, I haven't actually got around to actually setting them up into some sort of library, but maybe one day. But it's incredible the knowledge he's got.
Got some some gold nuggets somewhere along those collections of either those writings that you've had to some of the footage that you probably had.
Yeah, yeah, no, there's yeah, you go back and you see some of the things he does. Yeah, quite incredible. You know, even the empty hand stuff that he does. He doesn't tend to show a lot of that now. The Balintawak kickboxing program that he had. Even some of the hand drills are really quite impressive, the way that can do those locks and things. But he doesn't show a lot of that because it's mainly the stick that he wants to emphasise. The knowledge that he's got beyond the basic syllabus is extraordinary. Yeah, I mean, he calls it his spectrum of Balintawak, and I've tried to structure some of that into other different syllabuses here for us, just so I can remember the different things. I've got like all the counters and variations to everything, the left-hand syllabus, the full power syllabus, the empty hand, the edge weapons. So there's lots of different things that bases of knowledge that he has. It's yeah, amazing.
So, any words of wisdom or encouragement for those taking the long distance learning path?
Well, yeah, you just repetition. You got to get it there. You do. I mean, the beauty these days are there's so much content. Bobby's got his video series, which are excellent. So you know, you sometimes have to revisit those. You need to have someone to train with. I mean, you can only do so much by yourself. But yeah, I think you need to do a bit more visualization as well. I think when you train, you know, practicing the grouping system as a mirror form just by yourself, I think that's really valuable. You learn that from karate with the katas, and whenever they get an opportunity to train with Bobby, they just got to grab it with both hands. You know, that's it. So
right, yeah. Right. I read that I think I read it correctly that you were a live-in student of GM Bobby.
Yeah, when I stayed there, Paul and I stayed there for a couple of weeks, and you know, it was fantastic. He treats you like family. Seriously, picks you up from the airport, drives you everywhere. Luz is just fantastic. She's one of you know, God's gifts. I mean, she's such a beautiful person, and she treats you like family. Yeah, no, just incredible experience, and you know, he would just have people coming through. He'd be driving us around to other schools. We had the instructors all coming through, so we got an opportunity to train with all those guys, the early year guys there out in Charlotte, and that was yeah, incredible experience. And then of course when he comes over here, he'll stay with me for a couple of weeks, lives in the house, and you know, he's like part of the family. My kids have grown up with him. It's just, you know, Bobby, when's Bobby coming back? You know, it's all yeah, no, he's really part of the family. He's been my kids are like 22 and 19 now, and Bobby's known them since they were first born. I'm trying to collect the photos of all the world camps back from first one in '97 in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and you just see the numbers every year, just more and more and more people. I think these 2018, 2019, there's like you're getting 400 or 500 people. So, which is a pretty amazing type event.
Actually, I just posted on my Balintawak South Florida Instagram a picture from a 2003 World Camp, and then the one from 2019. And you know, the 2003 or 2004, we probably had about 20 people that were there, and then the one at 2019, you know, it was a good 400 people that were there. So quite significantly big.
Yeah, well, John Soriano, he runs his big camp in Seattle, and he was telling me a story there how the first camp he was a bit embarrassed. There was only 10 people there, and Bobby said, "That's okay, that'll grow." And now look at the size of his camp there. You know, he's got a fantastic organisation, and you look at the number of students he's brought through, and now qualified instructors as well, opening up their own clubs. So, you know, you're really lucky in America. You've got a lot of really high quality instructors there. You know, you've got Patrick Smith there too. I mean, obviously he doesn't teach as much because he's got his busy job there. You know, both the Soriano brothers. You've got guys who are running schools that like the next generation coming through, like Marzo and Corey, those sort of guys. So, you know, and then Michael, of course, in Cincinnati, he's been taken over the mantle from George, and has got a really strong organisation there as well. So, and of course, from the Cincinnati influence. You've got people like yourself and even Adam Greenspan up there in Navarre. So you got, really quite interesting. It just seems to bubble along and then reaches a point where, with the teaching model of bringing through the completion, and if they want to choose to become an instructor themselves, they have to bring someone else through. So, I think there's just that increasing momentum with the whole system.
And there's been a tipping point where it's just exponentially growth in terms of some great practitioners and
even like the other guy, Belton Lupus, you look at him and his club that he's building up there, and some of these guys, they're really high quality martial artists in other areas as well. So
great.
There's a lot of grapplers coming through too, which is obviously that adds another dimension of techniques and things too, which is good for the evolution of the system.
So what made you decide to become a Balintawak FQI?
Oh, I really didn't want to. Really, Bobby just said, I think you should be an instructor. I need someone down there. So that was it, really. I mean, I don't look for students. I mean, that's not my job. My job's in my medical practice. So but at the same token, I needed some students so that I had someone to train with. And a couple of the guys like Paul Gale and Jim Sarkis, they're not really so much my students. We're just good friends. And we've come up through the ranks in karate for many years, modern uness instructors, and so we've always probably taught each other, really, the three of us. And then other guys have come through. Gary was a student of mine, and he's subsequently had a couple of generations of instructors underneath him. So that's how the system grows.
I think a lot of us in the FQI positions never really meant to be going that route. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, we're here. Okay, I guess we're doing this. Who was your completion of the arts? I don't know if back then how that worked, but did you have a completion of the art?
I did a completion of the art myself, obviously, and then I had to bring through students. It was a little bit different for us because flying over there, when we would test, we wouldn't have our students fly with us, So you didn't tend to test like it is now, that the fully qualified test with his completion student and presents his product on the day. So it's a matter of to be a qualified instructor, you've got to be able to show you can teach. So you need to have a completion student. So we've all got completion students. We've got had heaps of completion students here. Probably one of the ones who, Gary, who's one of the other full qualifiers now, he was a completion student underneath me, and he would have tested back in about 2000. Monique, who's one of our female instructors down here, she was one of my completion students as well. She's still teaching. She runs a club down here. She's a fantastic teacher. She's works in the police and as well as teaching, and runs a good club here. And she's already had a few fully qualifieds underneath her.
How many FQIs do you think you have within Australia?
How many fully qualified?
Yes.
Who are active? It's probably still only 10 or 12. It's not a huge number. There are a couple that have gone on and done other things. A couple that get a little bit older. But we've had many completion students, and some just don't want to necessarily teach. They just like to train, and that's okay too. That's fine by us.
We've got plenty of those too.
yeah. So from our point of view, it's really just quality over quantity. We just want people, good people who want to train hard, and we enjoy catching up with. We enjoy having a laugh and a drink or something to eat afterwards, and we just enjoy being on the mat, trying not to eat each other. If we do eat each other, so be it, and laugh about it later.
We have more drinks because of it.
Yeah.
So how was your FQI journey experience? Were there any major challenges or hurdles?
To me, it's also was time. When I was doing that, I was pretty busy in my work life. I was working at one of the professional footy clubs here as a sports physician. I was writing a PhD thesis on nutrition. I was setting up a laser practice, and then I was going to try training, and then I sort of was partly settling down with a couple of kids. So it really yeah, I was time poor, right?
Right.
So I had to try and train smarter rather than longer. So, you know, I'd work out that even at work, I'd start practicing. I used to get just like a little small like about an 8-inch long weighted copper pipe. And I'd use that to train. So I couldn't swing a big stick around, a 26-inch around, because I'd smash something in the room. So I just had a smaller weighted thing to do all the practice movements. So that worked for me. I could do that during little breaks between patients, or someone didn't turn up, I could pull that out and train a bit. And then also, I look at how you train too. I sort of try and train a little bit more intensity rather than duration. So, you know, you look at, I don't know if you guys, if you know how much the stick that you weigh is.
Yeah.
Do you know how much your rattan stick that you use is? Do you weigh that and things like that? You know?
I don't know. I have a wide range of, I have a bucket full of sticks, and I actually mix it up just so I'm not used to one particular weight.
Yeah, well, I looked at that. Most of your rattan canes weigh between 150 to 200 grams. Right, that's what the weight of most of the canes are. Most Kamagons are about 400 grams. If you wanted a copper pipe with a 1-inch diameter, it's about 600 grams. So if you look at you wanting to train, the ideal thing is to try and train with a stick. Have what your ideal stick is, but then also do some endurance work with about a 50% heavier stick, and sometimes about a 25-30% lighter stick. So they've done studies in baseball in particular, looking at the weights of balls and the weights of bats, and looking at that. If you go too heavy on your stick, the problem is that it alters your biomechanics. So actually, it contributes to poor form and injuries. So you've got to be careful going too heavy, but at the same time, there's some benefits of a little bit heavier, but also a little bit lighter. Sometimes they've found helps with precision. So you got to train a little bit smarter with that. You got to look at the width of the cane as well. Most of your rattan canes are about 3/4 to about 1 inch in width. When you look at tennis rackets, they work on the circumference. Most tennis rackets, they work on the distance from the ring finger to your second palm of crease to work out how thick your tennis racket should be. Most tennis rackets are about 4.5 inches. But if you've got a 1-inch diameter stick, that's about a 3-inch circumference. So the problem is that if it's too skinny, your stick, people then clench too much to hang on to it. And what happens then is that they will get fatigued. So they'll get muscular cramps and fatigue. But at the same time, you got to hang on to your stick because you don't want to drop your stick. You just drop your stick, that's it. So there is a balance. When we first started training here, we were finding we got one of the hardest things to do when you're really training hard, really sweating hard, really holding onto that cane, is just you blow out your arm. You just can't go anymore. And Bobby would say, just relax, just relax. And you don't find out for a while how you can hold on tight and relax at the same time. So that just takes repeated effort. But we find here, particularly when people start, it helps if you have a little bit of a thicker cane. We often put a little bit of a tennis grip on the end, because the tennis grip means that you got a wider diameter cane. So you try and get up around, more 3.5 to 4-inch diameter. And then it also means if you're really sweating hard, they can hang onto the stick a little bit better when they're learning. Later on, we don't use the grips because you got to be able to swap between left and right hand, and you can't really do that with the grip. But I think the grip is a really good idea if you're really training hard, and probably in Florida where you sweat so much that it's a good thing to do. So that's so people have got to look at a little bit at how to train, and then if they look at how they train, you look at the intensity of your training. I mean, if you're looking at you want to do repeated efforts of techniques, what do you normally do? 45 seconds to about 60 seconds with each person when you rotate you through. Well, then you look at how do you train for that? Well, there's a thing called the 300-meter anaerobic test, and it looks at that basically for most people to run 300 meters is a good time is around about 60 seconds. Very good is maybe about 50 to run 300 meters. So if you want to train for something like that, you do repeated 300-meter interval training is the best training to get ready for an anaerobic activity like the stick fighting, ballistic repeat efforts. And so, yeah, whether that's running or it's on a bike or a cross trainer or whatever, that's what you've got to do. You've got to go as hard as you can for those 60-second durations, and that'll prepare you better to perform. So you got to try. What I'm saying is you got to train smarter. You just can't just spend 3 hours on the mat and thinking, oh no, I'm going to be ready for my training. It's how you train when you're time poor. You got to train smarter when you're time poor.
Yes, yeah, that's the golden nugget for you guys there. Train smarter when you're time poor, which a lot of us are.
Yeah.
What were your inspirations when coming up with your 24 techniques? Or did you come up with 24 techniques?
Yeah, the 24 techniques. Yeah, well, I looked at it pretty simplistically, really. I mean, really there's 12, 12 strikes, and there's basically 12 semi-advanced, and he's got 24 techniques. So I'll do 12 on the forehand side and 12 on the backhand side. To try and remember the 12, it seemed pretty easy to me that you do basically 4 lots of 3. So I just thought up one technique and 2 variations of that same technique. And so that to me wasn't very hard. The thing is, if you wanted me to do 24 techniques now, I'd do very different to what I did then, Obviously, Bobby emphasized that he wanted us to show skill set. What's your other skill sets,
Right, right.
And so if you've got high kicks, he wants high kicks. If you've got grappling, he wants people to take them down. And at that time, I was doing a reasonable amount of grappling. And so I had quite a few takedowns and things there. If I was doing them now, I wouldn't be doing any takedowns. The body's a bit broken. I don't want to get down on the mat unless I have to. So and I think also at that time, you do get a little bit, the mindset is about, okay, I'm going to do this finish. Okay. Now, how do I get there? Right? How do I set that up? Really? So it's all about the technique. You're thinking too much about the finish. Now, if I wasn't doing it, I'm thinking to myself, no, I'm thinking about where I get that person with a control, and then I can do whatever I want. So if I control on a rollover group 5, for example, I can do whatever I want, whether it's a punch, a kick, a knee, a headbutt, elbow, it doesn't matter. So to me, it's now more about the control position and then the technique that follows. But then it was more about the technique, and I was thinking more, how do I get to that position to do that technique? I want to do that finish. I'm thinking that's the finish I want to do. That's the takedown I want to do. How do I set that up? So the mindset just changes. But either way is good. But yeah, it depends what you want to show. Yeah, pretty simple, practical was my emphasis. But I tried to make it pretty easy to remember. 24 under stress, fatigue. You can start to forget which one you're up to.
Did you have an FQI Gauntlet?
Yeah, we did. Well, everyone who's there had to train with everyone who's there. And basically, we tend to do those gauntlet type things every time we trained. I mean, if there's like a half a dozen of them, Bobby would have you, what do you call these, Filipino style. You'd sit down, you'd stand up in the middle, and you'd have to actually feed everybody in order. Then they'd all come back and feed you in order. Then Bobby would feed you in order. So you'd be up for about 10 or 12, and then the next person would get up and you'd go through it again. And that would happen in most classes. So we tend to have that sort of training all the time. I think the gauntlet concept has become increasingly important because, it serves a couple of purposes. It's sort of performing under fatigue and duress, and actually not being able to, having only to be able to defend to whatever comes your way can be quite confronting. And it also can bring out characteristics. So whether people do have control, whether they lose their temper, those sort of things. And I think as the organisation has got bigger, and so some of the people testing for fully qualified, Bobby maybe is not trained with as much. So it's important for him to see the gauntlet, for him to see their character under duress and under fatigue. So I think the gauntlet is increasingly important as the organisation grows and gets bigger.
When's the last time you talked to G and Bobby?
Well, what time is it? Yeah. No, yesterday. I spoke to him. It's very funny because Bobby, he doesn't have like a normal person sleeping pattern. He'll just tend to doze off and wake up, and his messenger's always on. And when it's nighttime over there, where normal people would be sleeping, Bobby's often on his messenger or whatever, and that can be daytime here. So if I'm not working and it's during the day, we'll be talking a lot. And as I say, in the last sort of 12 months, I've probably had more regular contact with him than ever before, because of the book.
Any favorite GM Bobby Taboada quotes?
I think probably when he says enough, because it's almost like work it out yourself. When you say, how far should my arm go out on a punch there? He says enough. You have to work out what suits your body and how far it goes. So I quite like that concept of enough, which is really work it out yourself. But you got to be balanced. You got to have the power. You got to have the speed. So it's enough. So what's right for one person is different to another. So
that's that's a good point. I mean, I get it, but I've heard that enough so many times as well too. But you sit there and ponder, it's like, and you work it out on your own.
Yep, enough.
How has Balintawak impacted or influenced you?
I think it's opened me up to some friendships with some other people I probably may not well have had. I mean, I think it's when I work in a reasonably high level professional environment, so it's good to put balance in my life with mixing across a whole spectrum of people. And I think the learning to judge people on how they perform, so but based on their effort and attitude, not about what car they drive or house they live in or what their other status is, just purely on them as people. I think that's that's good for you as a person to be associating with that. And and the example of Bobby, just wanting to be a good example, trying to make the best of yourself, helping to bring the best out in others. That's sort of what I've gained more than out of the Balintawak than any of my other martial arts training.
How has Balintawak impacted or influenced your students from your perspective?
Well, I suppose they enjoy it. They keep turning up. So,
that's usually a good sign.
Yeah, a good sign, I guess. But I'd like to think it's been a positive experience for them. As I say, we've got it's only a small core we have here, but they're all really good people. If they were in trouble, they ring me up, I'd be there for them, so you develop those sort of strong friendships. So it goes beyond just, you're the teacher and they're the student. So that's what I would say. So, no, but it's really through being Bobby's example, really. That's what makes the system work to me as much as anything. Okay. And just how he's, when you look at the whole Balintawak systems and styles, how there was sort of so much division and jealousies and egos involved, and Bobby's managed to bring all of those together, quite incredible, just speaking to people for the book, the number who've given these sort of glowing testimonials from, not just all the other Balintawak systems and things, but, the modern Arnises, the Ilustrissimos, all the other styles and systems, they've all got such positive and great things to say about him. And, it's been a real eye-opener to me. I've never actually met anyone like Bobby who's got so many best friends. I mean, the second person you speak to say, oh, I'm Bobby's best friend. So that's something, I don't know how he does that, but...
Having been in the system as long as you have, I'm sure you've seen a good variation of practitioners. Are there any significant variations you see from practitioners from the yesteryears to today?
I think the people who have been in the system longer and have continued to train hard tend to have, very good skill sets. So I think, I look at people like Patrick Smith, and I look at people like John Soriano and people like that who've got really strong, technical expertise, and And they all of them train really hard. There's an intensity to their training. There's been some people there who've trained who no longer train very much now. Robert Clamfer, Eric Lawrence, really, really good people, and they were great supporters of Bobby when they were younger. And both of them travel around the world with him to demonstrate. Robert went to Germany and to Europe with Bobby for the big FMA festival there. I think it was 2004 in Dusseldorf, and he's been to Europe as well with him. Eric came out to Australia with him. He stayed at my house as well. Eric's a good friend of mine too. Developed a great friendship through the Balintawak, and he's been a great supporter of Bobby. He's there just like Sharon, who's been a fantastic supporter as well. So there's lots of good people, and that's not even mentioning Erwin, who was the one who's been responsible for even bringing Bobby to America. And you don't see Erwin do much these days, but really, I saw him do some scissor kick takedowns one stage over here in Australia.
Actually,
fantastic.
I've been on the receiving end of those scissor kick takedowns by Erwin during my completion of the art testing.
So there's lots of people with lots of good skill sets there, and I mean Rick Mitchell, for example. I mean, I don't know how many of you know how credentialed he is. I mean. Yes. He's stayed with me too here, Rick. He's fascinating history. He could write a book about Rick. I mean, he was in the movies. He was in the Karate Kid movie. Did you know that? Rick was in that. And then he won the world title in stick fighting, the first one in Italy. He won the gold medal in that. And then he went back the same year and won a gold medal in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the Pan Pacs under Hicks and Gracie. And that was as well as being Remy's sort of protege. I mean, I met Rick before I met Bobby. Rick came out to Australia with Remy Presses back in about '84, and he did a demonstration. That was my first introduction to FMA was Remy Presses. He was an interesting guy. He was like the real showman. He was fantastic. He would come up to you and he would say to you, "You're very, very good. You're really good at sticks." And, even though you weren't, and he'd say it to you, you'd feel special, then he'd go to the next person and tell them the same thing. So he was just building everyone up to feel good about themselves. But it did make you feel good about yourself too. And you might, geez, I want to learn this. So, he was a fascinating guy. You meet lots of people through it, and they've all got their own story and own way they've got there. So,
similar to being on the receiving end of Erwin's, I've also been on the receiving end of Rick Mitchell's takedowns. So during the same completion of the art testing, so have to touch hands and know exactly what you're talking about when these guys are specialized in their particulars. If you were given 30 seconds to quickly share the benefits of training Balintawak, what would you say?
I'd say the system, as Bobby teaches, it's the people that you can meet through that. But as a martial art itself, I mean, really, it's the development of your speed and reflexes. Really, that's what it is, And I think if people come into it with some other background in martial arts, there is some advantage to that they've got some skill sets and skills, and that can then be magnified through the training of the Balintawak. I mean, I'd love to have done the Balintawak for speed and reflexes when I was doing tournament karate. I mean, God sake, the speed and that you can develop would be so helpful if you want to do point scoring karate, I would have thought. But we never trained specifically to point score. We just trained free sparring, and now we're doing a tournament on the weekend. There was no specific training then. But imagine training with the sticks. And the beauty of the Balintawak is that it's still evolving. It's still there's still things coming. Has he told you about his gloves, his Balintawak gloves? He told you about that? What? He's working on?
Oh, yes. Actually, yeah, I remember a couple of years ago, I was there at his house and he was looking at a prototype or looking at different prototypes. And that was, So
that's really interesting. And so I like that sort of will be something that might be used in the future.
What do you think will be the hardest part about learning the art?
The hardest part, I think that you have to, you got to look at why you want to do it, and then set a goal and go for it. You got to put the effort in. You got to put the repetitions in. You got to sweat. I mean, the Balintawak, like a lot of it, if it's just slow and you're giving and you're showing a technique, that's to me that's a bit meaningless. There's got to be the intensity, the application of the techniques. It's the intensity that makes it different. Yes. So you got to be prepared to put that in. But really, I think I heard Randy Cannell. He was saying that he felt that the Arnis, the Balintawak was as close to having a fight without having a fight. The actual, just that simulation, the intensity and threat without anyone getting injured.
Knock on wood on that one. Knock on wood on that one.
I'd say there's none, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that it's none, but less. Yes. Just random stuff. All right, let's go movies. Wolverine with Hugh Jackman or Thor with Chris Hemsworth?
Oh, they're both Aussies. I mean, you're making that hard.
I specifically chose these because we're definitely Aussies.
Yeah, I'll probably have to go Wolverine. He's pretty out there with those claws. Yeah.
All right, let's go with movies. Gladiator or Braveheart?
Oh, I think we'd have to go with Gladiator. Yeah.
Gladiator. All right. Name something people need to bring at a Balintawak World Camp.
A stick, towel, and water, probably.
That seems to be a recurring theme. Name something you don't need to bring at a Balintawak World Camp.
Shyness. They need to go out there and speak to people, different hands, take advantage of the opportunity to train with so many people.
We just won $1 million, but have to spend it right now. What are we spending it on?
Well, I think we'd go to the casino and double it, wouldn't we?
You could double it or end up with none. But that's an option. If we were to get in a car, where would we be driving to?
Well, if it's during the day, we'd be going to the gym to work out. If it was night, we'd go to the nightclub, I guess, have a few drinks.
There it is. We ended up running down the street for some reason. Why are we running?
Why are we running? It's you and me, is it? Running down the street.
It's you and I.
Well, if we're running away from something, I'd be making sure I was in front of you because it was probably your fault that someone's chasing us. If we're running towards something, I'd probably make sure you were in front just in case there was trouble up ahead. That's what I'd say to that. Yeah.
There's another perspective on there. Awesome. Thank you for that. If somebody was interested in, joining up with Balintawak Australia and training, how would they contact you?
Really just through Bobby's website. Get in contact with Bobby and he'll pass them on, give them my email and I'll put them on. It depends where they live and what they want to do, and we can organise it from there. But yeah, just go through Bobby's website.
No, that's a wrap. Garth, thank you very much. I appreciate the time. Actually, those videos were great. You've got a lot of great footage. I mean, just nice little variations and things and things that are in there. And I was like,
photos, plenty of other stuff. You want anything else? It's what's a shame, a lot of people think they get to the fully qualified and I think they know it all, and they're just scratching the surface, and it really there's so much depth to the whole system and everything. It's quite amazing.